Father, we thank you for tonight. Thank you for people blessing us with these desserts. And we ask, Lord, that you would bless us most importantly with your presence, with your spirit, that you would give us understanding and you would teach us. Help your word to come alive to us, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right. And if you desire to bring a dessert, please don't feel like because others bring desserts, you can't bring a dessert. That is open for anybody that would like to. So, there's Mom. Hello. Good. All right.
Thank you, Pastor.
You're welcome.
Oh, we can start now. Just
So, we are in Genesis chapter 36, verse 1. And last week, we wrapped up with Isaac dying in verse 28. Jacob and Esau, his sons, came and they buried him. He was 180 years old whenever he passed away. Before that, we just have Jacob moving to Bethel. We went through a lot of what a lot of that means and things, but it ended with Isaac. It ended with Isaac passing away. That's Jacob and Esau's dad. So, verse 36. I'm going to warn you. Verse 36 is all about Esau. It's all about his descendants. I'm going to try to make it as interesting as I can. We may not, spend a whole lot of time in every single part of it, but I'm going to try to hit some highlights and bring something out of it. It was that, or just say verse 36 is kind of boring, and so we're just going to skip it. I hate skipping a chapter of the Bible, so we're just going to. But I spent a lot of time on it, and I think there's some little things that we can pull out that are interesting. Hopefully, they're not just interesting to me. Sometimes that happens. All right, well, let's begin. Chapter 36, verse 1. Now these are the records of the generations of Esau, that is Edom. Good to remember that. Because when we look at our map, we've said it over and over, but this land of Edom is named after Esau because he moved into this region. Before that, it was called the land of Seir. So let's keep going. Esau took his wives from the daughters of Canaan. Adah, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Aholibamah, the daughter of Anna, and the granddaughter of Zibeon the Hivite. All right. So remember, if you go back a few chapters, was Isaac and Rebekah happy about Esau's wives? No. They drove, especially Rebekah, drove her nuts. She couldn't stand these Canaanite women. All right. So, but specifically, they are Canaanite, but specifically, one was out of the Hittite people group and one was out of the Hivite people group, which are, when you pull down out of the larger Canaanite group, you'd have to go all the way back to Genesis 10 to see the sons of Ham, and Canaan is one of the sons of Ham, and then out of Canaan you have many of these tribes. In fact, almost every one of the tribes in Canaan comes out of, are in the land of Canaan, and this land comes out of Canaan. So the man. That's why they're called Canaanites, but then you'll see them broke down in Jebusites, Hivites, Hittites, and all of that. But the father of all of them is Canaan. All right, so, hello, Henry. So your first two, Adah and Aholibamah, the daughter of Anna, the granddaughter of Zibeon the Hivite. Now I'm going to take a moment here because we're going to come back to Miss Aholibamah. All right. You'd think, well, what in the world does that woman have to do with anything? Well, it's just some interesting stuff here. So she is mentioned quite a bit in the very fact that she is the daughter of Anna and the granddaughter of Zibeon the Hivite. We're going to see this mentioned a lot as we go through this chapter. Also, Basemath, Ishmael's daughter, the sister of Naboth. So there's our third wife, right? We have Adah, Oholibamah, and Basemath. And Basemath is Ishmael's daughter. Everybody remember who Ishmael is, right? He is the, you have Abraham's first son, born from Hagar, the maidservant, right? All right, so we're all remembering that. It's important we tie all this together. These names are not just any names. There's connections here going on. So he is now intermarried with, there's Egyptian blood coming down through Ishmael because Hagar was an Egyptian woman, all right? So he's married into that. He's married into Hivite and Hittite people groups as well. So his children have a lot of mixture coming out, right? All right, so let's keep going here. Ada, that first wife, bore Eliphaz. That's his firstborn. Then Basemath bore Reuel. And then Oholibamah bore Jush, Jalem, and Korah. These are the sons of Esau, who was born to him in the land of Canaan. Then Esau took his wives and his sons and his daughters and all his household and his livestock and all his cattle and all his goods with which he had acquired in the land of Canaan, and he went to another land away from his brother Jacob, for their property had become too great for them to live together, and the land where they sojourned could not sustain them because of their livestock. So Esau lived in the hill country of Seir. Esau is Edom. This is the hill country of Seir. Mount Seir is right in this area. I showed you that on another map a couple of weeks ago. So here's one of those interesting things. Back a few chapters, when Jacob meets Esau, we actually made a point of how Esau said, hey, come join me. Hey, guys, welcome, welcome. Come in, have a seat.
Thank you.
There's a coffee and desserts in there if you want to grab something before you sit down. Yeah.
Hey there.
Frank.
Jared.
Jared, nice to meet you.
All right.
Yeah. Jared.
Nice to meet you guys. Jared, and what was your name?
Tamara.
Tamara. All right, all right. Nice to have you all tonight.
Thank you.
You happen to come on one of the most difficult chapters, but Genesis chapter 36 is where we're at.
Thank you.
We're talking about Esau's descendants and his moves, Esau being the brother of Jacob. But we'll get through 36 here in just a little bit, and then we'll get into chapter 37, which has much more familiar stories. But so Esau moves away, which in verse 6 down to verse 8, it would appear that Esau and Jacob did stay together for a little bit. Remember back in chapter 34, it sounded like very quickly, or maybe it was 33, very quickly Jacob says, hey, yeah, I'll meet you there. And Esau goes on and he goes to Shechem, right? So it would appear that there was a little bit more time. And what I would attribute that discrepancy between the two stories is it's one of those places again where you see, we see this over and over in Genesis and other parts of Scripture, where you'll see kind of the setting of the big stage first, and then you'll go into the different theaters, right? So you'll go into this scene and we'll get more detail, and then this scene you get more detail, and sometimes in the details you go, well, I thought it all happened this way, but what this was an overview, and then you get the breakdown, the details, and we've seen that a lot in Genesis. So you got to kind of watch for those whenever you read something and you see this setting. Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 are great examples of this, because you've got this short description of the creation. And then in chapter 2, you've got this extreme detail, right, of what all was created. You've got the fall of man in chapter 3, and you get all this detail that you don't get in chapter 1, but it's the overview. And then you get the details, and that we see that repeated in the way the Hebrew would describe things. They give the overview, and then they give the details. So let's pick up now in verse 9. The descendants of Esau. These are the places in the Bible that really tests whether or not you really want to read the whole Bible, because it's not quite so-and-so begot so-and-so, but it's very close, okay? So these then are the records of the generations of Esau, the father of the Edomites in the hill country of Seir. And I've pointed that on the map several times, right down there on the south side of the Dead Sea. These are the names of Esau's sons. Eliphaz, the son of Esau's wife Ada. Reuel, the son of Esau's wife Basemath. The sons of Eliphaz were Teman, Omar, Zepho, and Gatam, and Kenaz. Timnah was a concubine of Esau's son Eliphaz, and she bore Amalek to Eliphaz. These are the sons of Esau's wife Ada. These are the sons of Reuel, Nahath, and Zerah, Shema, and Mizah. These were the sons of Esau's wife Basemath. These were the sons of Esau's wife Oholibamah, the daughter of Anah, and the granddaughter of Zibeon. This is the only one. Every time we see Oholibamah, we see not only is her father's name mentioned, Anah, but we also see the grandfather Zibeon. And we're going to see maybe a little bit more reason why as we get over later in our chapter. So just pay attention to that. Oholibamah bore to Esau these three sons that we mentioned up above, Jush, Jalem, and Korah. Now we're to verse 15 if I've lost you. These are the chiefs of the sons of Esau. The sons of Eliphaz, the firstborn of Esau, are Chief Teman, Chief Omar, Chief Zepho, Chief Kenaz, Chief Korah, Chief Gatam, Chief Amalek. These are the chiefs descended from Eliphaz in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Ada. These are the sons of Reuel, Esau's son, Chief Nahath, Chief Zerah, Chief Shema, Chief Mizah. These are the chiefs descended from Reuel in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Esau's wife Basemath. These are the sons of Esau's wife Oholibamah, Chief Jush, Chief Jalem, Chief Korah. These are the chiefs descended from Esau's wife Oholibamah, the daughter of Anah. These are the sons of Esau. That is Edom. These are their chiefs. All right, so I know that's difficult. It's not the funnest parts to read in the Bible, but we've gotten through it. So hear me out here. What you've just seen is a beginning in verse 9 where he starts to give the records of Esau. And the way they wrap it up is they'll say, now these are the sons of Esau. That is Edom and their chiefs. So you kind of know when it starts and when it ends, all right? Because of the way they bookmark those things, or rather bookend those things. Now he's about to get into where we're still under Esau's family, all right? But we're about to look at a different branch, okay? Because remember, Esau married some Canaanite women. He married a Hivite and a Hittite. So we're about to read part of that, and I need to help you understand something here. Verse 20 says, these are the sons of Seir, the Horite, all right? Now, when I was reading this and studying, I was like, especially as you get on down, you're going to see where it appears the scripture is calling Anah, the father of Oholibamah, definitely a Horite, right? From the descendants of the Horites. When I read this, you're going to see that. But over in chapter 36, verse 2, it said he was a Hivite. So when you look this up and you say, what's going on? It's possible, the way that they're trying to figure out how this might have worked out is either Zibeon, who's the grandfather, either his mother was a Hivite and his father was a Horite, or Hivites and Horites are the same thing. Remember, we have the children of Israel. They're called the children of Israel, the children of Jacob, right? They're called by different names. And only if you know the descendants and you know the name changes that take place, do you understand that, right? And also, you have the people in the land of Canaan. All of these are called Canaanites, right? Because their great so on father is Canaan. In Genesis 10, he's one of the sons of Ham. And so they're called, when you look in Genesis 10 verse 6, the sons of Ham, they're Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan, right? But when you start looking through all the people groups, these people are all called by the Jebusites, the Hivites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Philistines, which are actually not a part of the Canaanites. All of these, so they can be called by the names of a later forefather, or they can be called by a very distant forefather. Okay, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right, so whenever you see someone called a Horite and a Hivite, it's possible that it's just going by an even further. Let's say, take an example again. So Israel is called Israel. They're also called Jacob in Genesis. The name gets flipped back and forth because his name was Jacob and he gets changed to Israel, right? But do we not also hear these same people called the children of Abraham, right? Abraham's the great-grandfather of Jacob, whose name changed to Israel. Now we've got three names that the same people group are called by. So you can see where the Horites and the Hivites and these things we really don't have an answer for why some of those names are different. But I'm just giving you examples of how it can be, but it be referring to the same people. So let's now go back to verse 20. By the way, one more thing to help you have some reason for why I would read through this quickly and try to give you some nuggets out of it, is because this shows that the Bible is not just a mythological book of stories. Because if it were all about a great narrative, this chapter would have been cut out, right? Because it's not that interesting. And why would we care about who had who and what their names were, right? Who cares?
Those names.
Right, especially those names. Y'all notice I just say them fast, and I hope nobody tries to correct me. So, but there's the great things that you pull out of the scriptures from areas like this is this shows that these things happen in history. Not only can you go over to this land in the modern day country of Jordan and the modern city of Amman, Jordan, and you can go down to Petra down here and you can see archaeological remains of where these people groups lived. You can see all this. You can see the ancient ruins of these cities that we talk about in Genesis. Not only do you have that, but you have names of kings, names of chiefs, names of people. And it brings validity that what we're reading here is a work that is coming right out of the history of the world. It's actually naming people. And if you've done much study in archaeology or history or anything like that, you know that many kings and places, kings and people groups that are in the Bible are also mentioned in other sources of history, of ancient history. It's found in Babylonian history. It's found in ancient Assyrian history. It's found in Phoenician history. Found in lots of different history, plus even later works in the Roman historians like Tacitus and Josephus, the Jewish historian. So it's important that we see God doesn't put anything in His Word that's useless. All right? Nothing in His Word that's useless. Okay, so let's now go back to verse 20, because I have this habit of chasing things around. All right, these are the sons of Seir, the Horite. When you see something like that, you know that Seir was a Horite. This region, on other maps, Mount Seir sits right in this region, and it's even called the land of Seir in places. It just depends on the age of the map and the time period you're looking at. But he says the inhabitants of the land, these are the sons. So Lotan, Shobal, and Zibeon. There's that Zibeon, right? Remember, Zibeon's the grandfather of Oholibamah, who is one of the wives of Esau, right? And then there's Anna, and Dishon, and Ezer, and Dishan. These are the chiefs descended from the Horites, the sons of Seir, in the land of Edom. And what's odd is, that's twice that these are called Horites, but you've got Zibeon and you've got Anna mentioned over in chapter 36, verse 2. Now, the question that comes up is, how is it that Anna is mentioned in there like he's a sibling of Zibeon? It doesn't make sense. So there again, we have these places where we have to examine what are possibilities here. Is it possible that This is that Zibeon is a firstborn of the other Zibeon, possibly, but you could have another Anna, but it makes the Anna that's mentioned there seems to be fitting with the Anna that's mentioned all the way through this chapter. That is the father of Oholibamah. So we're going to move on because I don't have answers to all of these things, but I'm just trying to give you some ideas of what you do with it. These are the chiefs of the descendants from the Horites, the sons of Seir in the land of Edom. The sons of Lotan were Hori and Hemam, and Lotan's sister was Timnah. These are the sons of Shobal, Alvin. There's a nice simple American name. Alvin, Manahath, and Ebal, Shepo and Onam. These are the sons of Zibeon, Ayah, I'm going to guess, and Anna. All right, so we know, just like we're seeing over in chapter 36, verse 2, Zibeon is the father of Anna, and Anna will be the father of Oholibamah, who is the wife of Esau. All right, so let's go back verse 24 and see it again. These are the sons of Zibeon, Ayah, Anna, and he is the Anna who found the hot springs in the wilderness when he was pasturing the donkeys of his father Zibeon. Now you might say, why is that in there? Well, apparently it was special to them that this is the guy who found the hot springs. So again, if we're trying to create this great story and narrative, do we really put who founded the hot springs, right? But it's giving us evidence that this is real. This is real. And if there's anything to get excited about, it's the fact that we're reading history, and not every part of history is exciting, okay? So
you can go there and find the hot springs.
You can go find the hot springs. You can know that, and I know y'all all heard of Anna who found the hot springs while out with his father's donkey. And this is that Anna, right? That's what he's saying. So he's saying this is not any other Anna. This is that Anna that everybody's talked about, right? So that's what he's getting to. These are the children of Anna, Dishon and Oholibamah. And now you've got Dishon mentioned again up above, so it almost looks like the inhabitants of the land. It's not necessarily that Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, and Anna, and Dishon, and Ezer, and Dishan, that they are necessarily all siblings, as much as they are famous descendants. Because you have Anna mentioned with Zibeon, and Zibeon is apparently the father from all the other passages. Anna is his son, but then you've got below that, Dishon is a son, right? Hemdan and Ishban and Ithran and Shiran. These are the sons of Ezer. Bilhan and Zaban and Akan. These are the sons of Dishan, Uz and Aran. These are the chiefs descended from the Horites. Chief Lotan, Chief Shobal, Chief Zibeon, Chief Anna, Chief Dishon, and Ezer and Dishan. These are the chiefs descended from the Horites according to their various chiefs in the land of Seir. All right, so let's try to pull this together again to kind of bring some interest to this area. What we're seeing here is that Esau is intermarried with the Horite people. And the Horites, if you were to skip ahead into the book of Numbers, the Horites lived right in this area, and they are part of the people groups that will be driven out of the land by Esau. In fact, the passages in Josiah in the book of Joshua say that Esau's descendants come in, and they are the ones who drove out the Horites, as well as the giants that were in the land on this side of the Dead Sea. And it names all of them: the Zamzummim, the Emim, that were the size of the Anakite, the Anakim. Very, 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 very tall people. He is intermarried with the people group that he will eventually, his people will drive out of the land. So remember, when Jacob and Esau are born to Isaac, they're all still sojourners in a foreign land. They're very careful. As Abraham comes in, he's a stranger. That's what a sojourner is. It's not his land, but God promises to give it to his descendants. Isaac is born out of Abraham, and then out of Isaac comes Jacob and Esau. And so they're still only 3 generations of being in this land, and they're still living in tents. They're still wandering around. Everything from Beersheba to Hebron is where Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Esau all have lived, until Jacob goes all the way back up here and finds his wife Rachel and his other wife Leah by trickery, and then comes back down into the land. And so then Esau moves down here because they can't live together, right? We've just read that. So we're now seeing all of Esau's descendants, because this land is going to be populated with the people of Edom, which is Esau's descendants, and they're just letting us see all the kings and the chiefs that have come out of him. I'm going to move down to verse 40. We're going to wrap up this chapter, praise the Lord, and then we're going to move into chapter 37. All right, now these are the names of the chiefs descended from Esau according to their families and their localities by their names. Chief Timnah, Chief Alva, Chief Jetheth, Chief Oholibamah, which would appear that Oholibamah, the wife of Esau, was a chief. Go figure, right? So a female chief. I would be pretty surprised if there's more than one Oholibamah out there, but maybe so.
You're saying Obama?
No, Oholibamah. Yeah,
Okay.
this is Oholibamah.
Who is J-Lo? You know how these things, captioning doesn't pick up the right words? You mentioned J-Lo.
J-Lo, goodness. And all those names I mentioned.
I don't know who J-Lo is.
I don't know who J-Lo is. I named a bunch of names. They're some descendant of Esau, I can tell you that.
And then Basement.
Basemath is one of the wives of...
That's the name, Basement?
Yeah, Basemath is her name.
Okay.
Basemath is a wife of Esau. Oholibamah is a wife of Esau. And Ada, A-D-A-H, is a wife of Esau.
Well, I'm glad I'm not the only one that gets hung up on names.
Yeah, this is a fun chapter. This is why I debated just saying, read 36 on your own. We're going to 37. All right, does anybody else have a question about this chapter before we move to chapter 37?
Well, I'm not going to say it's interesting.
Yeah.
But you notice I didn't say they can get you on a record trip.
Exactly. Nobody wants to get us camping out in this chapter, right? So, all right. I do find these areas very interesting. I really do, but I'm trying to not.
That's fine.
If I go real deep, I'm going to bore the heck out of you, because honestly, I had other verses I could track back and forth and show you the Hivites and their history. One interesting note about the Hivites, which Oholibamah is a Hivite, right, out of Hivite, is the Gibeonites that Joshua makes an agreement with to not destroy. They're Hivite people. And that's much further down the road. But the Hivites are mentioned, they're even mentioned all the way back in Genesis 10 as part of the Canaanite people that come out of Ham, the third son of...
I was going to ask you one question now. You said something about the tall people.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask you, are these all giants?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a whole class. I got a lot of scriptures on all the giants that are mentioned from Genesis all the way into 1st and 2nd Samuel and Joshua, Judges, all the books of the law. They're mentioned, all the different names of their tribes. And but yeah, we would chase a big rabbit if we got into that. So we've already done that too. I've already mentioned it several times and preached a sermon on it. So let's go to chapter 37, verse 1. Yes, ma'am, Ann.
You were mentioning that Oholibamah was female, and that she became a chief.
She's mentioned as one of the chiefs, yes.
Okay. Timnah is too, and Timnah is a female.
So it is.
That really confused me when I read it.
Yeah.
So maybe.
There's several women chiefs, which we know that happens in a lot of cultures around the world. So it's just interesting to find that, right?
Would that be called a chiefette?
Yes.
You know, maybe the Hebrew didn't give the feminine. I don't know.
I don't know if you want to say that to your face.
All right. Moving on to chapter 37. Now we're moving back to Jacob. We've covered Esau. You get a little bit of minor stuff, but now we're going into our main character again, Jacob, who is Israel. Out of him comes the 12 sons, which are the 12 tribes of Israel. Remember all of that. So we're back to Jacob again. Now Jacob lived in the land where his father had sojourned, in the land of Canaan. These are the records of the generations of Jacob, right? So we just did the records of Esau. Now we're doing the records of Jacob. You're about to know all of these names much better. This is a whole lot more fun and will make more sense to you. Joseph. Joseph is the first one he starts with, right? Joseph, when 17 years of age, was pasturing the flock with his brothers while he was still a youth, along with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. Remember who Bilhah and Zilpah are, right? They're both the maidservants. Bilhah was the maidservant of Rachel. Zilpah was the maidservant of Leah, right? They ended up, because those two wives wanted them to have even more children, they gave their maidservants, and he ends up having children by all four of those ladies. All right? So Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. What do we call that nowadays? A tattletale. So Joseph doesn't, we're going to see a lot of reasons why Joseph is not liked as a young man. But let's keep going because we've got to get through all of that, right? So Joseph brings back a bad report to his father about his brothers. And it says, now Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons. That's not right either. He showed favoritism, and that favoritism doesn't lead to anything good in his family. We know by now the patriarchs are not perfect people. We know their decisions are not always right. We know many of the laws that Moses will be given will correct things the patriarchs did, right? So this is one more area. Showing favoritism, we're going to see how it brings conflict, just like marrying sisters brought conflict, right? Leah and Rachel fought like cats and dogs. It's not good to have more than one wife because Hagar and Sarai, it was bad. You just don't want to do this, right? So let's keep going. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a vari-colored tunic, a multicolored coat, right? His brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, and so they hated him and could not speak to him on friendly terms. Now, there's another reason why Jacob loved Joseph more. It had to do with a problem that Jacob had much earlier in life. He loved Rachel more than Leah, more than Bilhah, more than Zilpah. Because Rachel was his favorite wife, when she finally had a son and his name was Joseph, Joseph is the favorite of his sons, which, as you can tell, leads the other 10 brothers to hate him. Benjamin hasn't been born quite yet, or is not yet mentioned. He'll be born later. Well, let's see. We already did read where Rachel died. So he's born, but he's too little to be a part of the storyline right now. Okay, so let's keep going. Verse 5. Then Joseph had a dream. If things weren't bad enough, Joseph has tattled. Joseph is a favorite. There's already 2 marks against him, all right? Now we come to Joseph having a dream. And when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. Even more. He said to them, "Please listen to this dream which I have had. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf rose up and also stood erect. And behold, your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf." Then his brothers said to him, "Are you actually going to reign over us? You're like the baby of the family outside of Benjamin. Are you really going to reign over us? Or are you really going to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. You know, Joseph didn't come up with the dream. God gave it to him. But it's a tough thing to be Joseph because he has no friends, really, outside of his dad. Everybody else hates Joseph. His whole family hates him. Verse 9 says, "Now he had still another dream and related it to his brothers and said, Lo, I have had still another dream, and behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me." So he does include Benjamin in that because he's naming 11 stars, right? He would be the 12th. Brian, did you have a question?
Does he want them to hate him?
No, I don't think so.
Why do you keep telling him?
Yeah, you would think that. Why do some kids just keep tattling even when they know it makes everybody mad? Why? We don't know, but he does. He tends to do things, and maybe Joseph is a little spoiled because he is a favorite, and he just doesn't see how. I mean, he knows they hate him, but maybe he thinks he's just right and perfect. I don't know. But he continues to do it. Yeah, I mean, we see it still happening to this day with people.
Well, it served him well later on.
It does, and I think the suffering and the pain he goes through, God uses it to purge out the spoiling. Whatever corruption was done by being the favorite and being spoiled by his dad, it will get burned out in the trials that are coming for him. So, and God will be preparing him to use him in a very special way. Isn't this something? I love to stop and point these things out to you. You know, you can start out and nobody can see any hope for you. Nobody, right? You're the spoiled kid that drives everybody nuts. And you have this dream and everybody's going, really? God likes you? He's going to choose you to do something? Are you really going to rule over us? Nobody can see it. But you see, we don't get to determine our paths. God knows where we're going. He knows what he's called us to. He knows the path he's put us on, where he's caused us to be born. He knows the trials and the things he'll send across our path to develop us and prepare us for how he's going to use us in life. And that's what we see going on in Joseph. Verse 9, he has this other dream, and he sees the sun and the moon and the 11 stars, and they were all bowing down to him. What do you think the sun and the moon represent? Mom and dad, right? The sun being the father, the moon being mom. So he relates this not only to his brothers, but verse 10 says he relates this to his father and to his brothers, and his father even rebukes him. His father thinks he's an arrogant punk, you know, who thinks everybody's going to bow down to him. And so he rebukes him. But Jacob has encountered God enough in life, right? Remember the whole Jacob's ladder. He has experienced God showing up and speaking to him. He's experienced dreams. He's experienced his own share of visions. And so after he rebukes him, there's something that begins to stir in him. Listen to what the passage says here. He says, he rebukes him and says, "What is this dream that you have had? Shall I and your mother and your brothers actually come to bow ourselves down before you to the ground?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. That's wisdom, right? He doesn't understand it. In fact, he even corrects him at first and questions it, but he keeps it in mind. So he says, okay, I don't like the sound of it. It sounds really stupid, but what if God gave him this dream? If God gave him this dream, we need to hold this loosely, put it on a shelf, and wait and see what's going to unfold here, right?
He was 17. So if you think of that dynamic where we all were at 17, it's kind of like the cusp between adulthood and being a child.
Yeah.
Although in that culture,
you know it all.
Yeah. That's exactly where he was.
You better get over yourself.
and his brothers were older. They're going,
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. Back in years past, we're taught Sunday school with young people, fifth and sixth grade, for example.
Yeah.
Kids that you couldn't get. You thought they weren't listening to anything.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, you couldn't wait to get them out of there because you just go babysit them next Sunday. Then eventually grew up to be leaders of the church.
Yeah.
They were listening. You didn't know they were listening.
Exactly.
It was just part of their makeup.
Yep. A lot of them are listening while they're in the middle of doing all these other things that we think are distracting them.
yeah, they're not reaching them at all.
Yeah.
You think.
Verse 12 says, "Then his brothers went to pasture their father's flock in Shechem. Israel said to Jacob," and you guys remember where Shechem is, right? Right up here. This is where they're living at now. The land of where Isaac lived and Abraham lived was right here at Hebron, which is also called the Oaks of Mamre. Kiriath Arba, that's what this city was called for many years, and Beersheba. But when he came back, they've been in Shechem. And we've been, the last few chapters that we read about Jacob, that's where his family's at. So his older brothers are out tending the flock in Shechem. Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send you to them. And he said to them, I will go. Then he said to them, go now and see about the welfare of your brothers and the welfare of the flock, and bring word back to me. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron. But you know what? I forgot about this. We read this. Remember what happened at Shechem a week or two ago? Levi and Simeon, right? Yeah. So their sister Dinah was raped by the prince of Shechem, the son of the king of Shechem, and he rapes, and then he wants to marry Dinah, and the sons say, only if you all get circumcised, right? And Jacob, we don't hear his voice at all, but he seems to be there in the story, nodding his head, okay? So they go back and convince all the men of Shechem to all get circumcised. And as soon as they are in the middle of recovery from that, where they are all hurting like crazy, Levi and Simeon, unbeknownst to their dad or any of their other brothers, goes in and kills every male in Shechem. And what does Jacob say? Why did you do this? You've made us a stench in this land. And Jacob actually fears that the other people groups who are all related to these folks, which are all Hivites, because Gibeon is up in this area, all of this, these are all related people, and he's afraid they're all going to come down and wipe them out. So they move back to Hebron. I forgot that part. Thanks to the text, it reminds us, right? So we're back in Hebron, and he's literally sending his sons up to tend their flocks all up in Shechem. And guys, this is this is not bad if you're driving, okay? You can do this in about 3 hours, 2 hours, if you're driving. But if you're not driving and you're walking with herds, this is a long ways.
It's over 100 miles.
It's a long ways, yeah. It's a long ways. And he's sending his son, 17, 18-ish, all the way up to the region of Shechem, where the sheep are being tended to. And that could be because when you get down in this area, if you ever get to go to Israel, this is very rough, rocky, desert region. As you can tell, it starts to green up in this area, but even right along the Dead Sea is all very dry and desert. You can't find anything green. So he probably sent them to those pastures far up north. But let's go back now. So he sends him up from Hebron up to Shechem in the north. And verse 15 says, a man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, what are you looking for? He said, I am looking for my brothers. Please tell me where they are, pasturing the flock. Then the man said, they have moved from here, for I heard them say, let us go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. And I can't remember if Dothan is on our map. Yeah, it's a pretty small place probably. We probably have to find a different map, and some things we don't even know where those cities were at. So let's keep going. When they saw him, that is his brothers, whenever they saw Joseph from a distance, and before he came close to them, they plotted against him to put him to death. They said to one another, here comes this dreamer. Now then, come and let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits, and we will say a wild beast devoured him. Then let us see what will become of his dreams. But Reuben, remember Reuben is the oldest. Reuben heard this and rescued him out of their hands and said, let us not take his life. Reuben further said to them, shed no blood. Throw him into this pit that is in the wilderness, but do not lay hands on him, that he might rescue him out of their hands to restore him to his father. So Reuben, I say, has a clear head here. I mean, he's not perfect by any stretch, but he rescues him. He says, go ahead and throw him into the pit. You know, I know you don't like him, neither do I. But he does want to go get him out of the pit after they leave and take him back to his father. Right? So he has enough respect for his father to not do this thing that the other sons want to do. Verse 23 says, so it came about when Joseph reached his brothers, and they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the very colored tunic that was on him, and they took him and threw him into the pit. Now the pit was empty, without any water in it. Then they sat down to eat a meal, and as they raised their eyes and looked, behold, a caravan of Ishmaelites was coming from Gilead with their camels, bearing aromatic gum and balm and myrrh, on their way to bring them down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, what profit is it for us to kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him, for he is our brother, our own flesh. And his brothers listened to him. Then some Midianite traders passed by, so they pulled him up and lifted Joseph out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. Thus they brought Joseph into Egypt. Again,
How much did Judas get for selling out Jesus?
30 pieces of silver. Yeah. There you have Midianite and Ishmaelites being interchanged, don't you? He's talking about Midianite traders and selling them to the Ishmaelites, and he's using it interchangeably. Ishmael, of course, is that first son of Abraham out of Hagar. And so that would be out of his descendants. Midian, the land of Midian, is down here. So for the Midianites, and I believe Ishmael moved further into this area as well when he moved away. We have to go back multiple chapters to get back to Ishmael. But he lived down in this region. I wish I could remember the name of it right now. But anyways, the Midianites are right down here near that land as well because, well, here I'll flip maps for you real quick because it's easier to explain. So this is the land of Midian, and we know that because whenever Moses will lead the children of Israel out of Egypt, they will come down, cross the Red Sea, which today we know of as the Gulf of Aqaba, and they cross over into the land of Midian. And we know that his father-in-law was a priest of Midian, right? And so this is where the Mount Sinai sits here. A lot of your maps in your Bible will say it sits right in the middle of the Sinai Peninsula, but there's no archaeological evidence for that at all. The archaeological evidence is in modern-day Saudi Arabia, which is ancient Midian. And for the people who have snuck in and took video, there is lots of great archaeological evidence. There's a really good video you can watch on Prime, I think, right now, Amazon Prime. It's called The Real Mount Sinai. And it's really good. It's documentary stuff, and they show footage of it all. And even the people groups that live around there know it as the Mount of Moses. So really cool stuff. But this is Midian, and so Ishmael moves down here after he is run off. Remember, Hagar and Ishmael are chased off because Sarah can't stand Hagar and Ishmael. Well, now these traders are coming back, and that's why you've got the name going from Midianite to Ishmaelite, because they all live in the same region. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So I know it's chasing little rabbits, but it helps us to understand why.
Can I chase a rabbit real quick?
Yes, sir.
Has anyone ever went to the Red Sea and see if they could do the underwater
Yes.
deal and try to find the chariots?
Yes, yes.
They have?
There are different documentaries out there where people they claim they've seen wagon wheels down there, but I forgot, some of them, one guy didn't have the camera when he saw it. He went back to get the camera, came back down, and couldn't find it again. So there's different stories, and I know you always have to weigh out things. I know that, and whether you take it as all gospel and everything. But when you put together the evidence, and I can't really chase along on this, but there's one place, and it's right about in this area, where the geography slopes down, and there's actually like a land bridge under the water. Now, I'm not saying land bridge like where they're walking around knee-deep water, okay? Because the Bible plainly says the Red Sea was divided and there were walls of water and the ground was dried up under it, and it drowned the Egyptians when they came across after. So that is not knee-deep water, okay? But what you wouldn't do is take thousands of people with all their animals and their carts and their children and have them go down a rugged cliff, right? You're going to need geography that slopes. And so along this edge of the Sinai Peninsula, there are very few areas that fit that criteria. And so when you find that, that's a great area to begin to go and say, okay, what's going on under the water there? And so some of the people who have gone over there and done the underwater research, it gets very deep around it and finding things, and you're talking about thousands of years since Moses, you know. So about 1,500 years before Christ. So about 3,500 years. So anyways, yeah. But there's some really good documentaries out there about that. Okay, I've got to wrap us up. I don't know that I'm going to get us through the end of the chapter. It may just be too much. I just like to have you at a pretty good stopping point because I'll be gone for a long time. 6 minutes. Let's just get through this. I think we can get through the chapter and we'll have a good stopping place. All right. So we're down to verse 23. So it came about when Joseph reached his brothers. They stripped him. Okay, we got that. Verse 25. Then they sat down to eat a meal, and as they raised their eyes and looked, behold, the caravan of Ishmaelites. Okay, we already read that. Sorry. 28. Thank you. Then some Midianite traders passed, and they pulled him up. They lifted Joseph out of the pit, sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. Thus they brought Joseph into Egypt. That's how Joseph will get into Egypt, and there's a whole story that'll follow. Now Reuben returned to the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit. So most likely Reuben was out taking his turn managing the flock, and he left the camp. And when he comes back, so someone else can take their turn, Joseph has been sold. If he had been there, he would have prevented that. So he's not in the pit. So he tore his garments, which is a sign of great grief and mourning and lament. He returned to his brothers and said, the boy is not there. As for me, where am I to go? Which means, how do I, as the oldest, bearing the responsibility of all my brothers, how do I go home to my father now without his youngest son? Especially when his youngest son was his favorite. How do I go back, right? So they took Joseph's tunic, and they slaughtered a male goat and dipped the tunic in the blood. And they sent the vari-colored tunic and brought it to their father and said, we found this. Please examine it to see whether it is your son's tunic or not. Then he examined it and said, it is my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces. So Jacob tore his clothes and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. Then all his sons and all his daughters arose to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, surely I will go down to Sheol in mourning for my son. So his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, Pharaoh's officer, the captain of the bodyguard. And so the stage is set for what's going to be happening in Joseph's life. The famous stories of Joseph, right? I always like to note these things. It says that he was surely torn to pieces by wild beasts. If you go to Israel today, you're not going to see wild lions walking around or bears, all right? But in these days, there are bears, there are lions, there are very wild things in this area. Remember, Egypt is only here, which this is the continent of Africa, right? These things exist all up in this region still. And I don't know exactly when they were all wiped out, but they were there in these times. They're mentioned all through the scriptures. So we have lions in different stories in the Old Testament attacking. We have bears. If you remember Elijah and Elisha's stories with bears in them. So this is all going on in this region. So when he says wild beasts, it's very possible these things have come. And even in David's time, right? David is 1,000 years before Christ. And even in David's time, it says that he fought off lions and bears to protect the sheep when he was a boy as a shepherd. So they're around even into David's day and time, along with the near extinction of the giants. He'll take out, Goliath, and then after David even dies, there's a few more giants that are mentioned, and after that, the entire race of giants is gone. So, all right. Does anybody have a? It's shut out on me. So, anybody else have any questions or comments?
I got a comment.
Okay.
I can't believe these aggravating guys do that to Jacob. Can you imagine?
It's jealousy.
Oh my gosh.
Jealousy.
They have killed him.
Well, in some ways, they had some good reason for being angry with him all. Not enough maybe to sell him off, but
Here he is, Dad sitting to spy on us.
Well, I find it interesting. I know they're trying to cover their tracks.
Yeah.
But I find it interesting that they say, "Is this his tunic?" Like his father would say, "You know good well what his tunic looks like."
Yeah. But it's all to let Dad
Yeah.
put together the evidence. Oh my, it is, and there's blood on it. He must have been torn to pieces. Yeah. So they're not telling him.
Yeah.
They're playing like we found this.
Well, I know.
You know. Yeah, it's all part of that innocent game, isn't it?